Other thing I want to speak to you about, Dom, we'll fly through this one. The Boxing Board Racism documentary that came out the other week. Ian John Lewis, Jeff Hines, and a female boxer, Ruxana Begum. Between them, they accused the Boxing Board of racism, sexism, and Islamophobia. I think you watched it, and just your opinion on, because I think you've got loads of experience with Ian, Jeff Hines, and I don't know if you've met Ruxana before.
Well, you see, most fans only see the likes of Jeff Hines and Ian John Lewis on TV. But when you've run around the circuit like I have for years and years and years, even though when I was operating with these high-level fighters, I still work with journeymen, middle-of-the-road men, 50-50 fighters, because it's all experience. So, you know, on the circuit, I've had experience of Jeff Hines. Jeff Hines was always a very, very, very poor referee in my eyes. And one example was I had a fighter called Jason Collins, very lovely kid, tough as nails, very, very high-level journeyman, would fight anybody and put 100% in. And he boxed a guy in London, and the guy headbutted him. And Jason Collins went down, and the referee was trying to talk him back into the fight. And I'm saying to Jeff Hines, you should disqualify him, it was a blatant headbutt. And Jeff Hines was looking at me and telling me to be quiet and trying to talk the fighter back up again. And the fighter stayed down. And the reason he stayed down is because I tell my fighters, if anybody fouls you in a fight, especially with a headbutt in the face, and you don't feel it, and no matter what the referee tells you, stay down, because you're at an automatic disadvantage. And the referee's in there to ensure the safety of both fighters, not to make sure that the home fighter wins. And luckily, Jeff Hines was forced to disqualify the other, Delroy Mellis they called the guy, another black guy, forced to disqualify him, and he was forced because he didn't want to do it. So you've got a guy there who's supposed to be looking after the safety of the fight, who wasn't. So I can remember as well, it caused a bit of it was at Bethnal Green, and ever since that fight, and I've had fighters in, you know, being refereed by Jeff Hines, I've never rated him as a referee. Ian John Lewis the same when he first started off on the circuit. Found him to be very indecisive, not very forceful in what he did, never full of conviction, and he had several complaints against him before he got struck off. And you've only got to look through his record of when he was judging fights as well, that you'd have two referees, two judges having this exact same score, and he would go completely the other way, and you just think, what is he looking at? And it's not just a one-off, it was happening over time, and I'm sure the board have got, you know, the scoring, the record of it, the you know, put a portfolio together of all the mishaps and the things he's done wrong before, because the board very rarely discipline the referees and officials that way unless they're doing it over and over and over and over again. It's becoming blatant. So, you know, it's been a long time coming, to be honest. As far as the female boxer's concerned, you know, I remember originally, I think she signed up with the company that David Hay had with the American promoter, and she actually came to this gym. She messaged me on Instagram. She came to this gym to spar Nicola Adams, and I wasn't there, but my brother John, who trained Nazim Habib, supervised the sparring session, and I think they stopped it after 2 rounds because she just wasn't even in the spar. It's like he said, I can't believe that she's actually boxing because she's that bad. And, you know, whether people think they're going to make money out of her because she's a female when she started her boxing career, I don't know. She's not a bad-looking woman, so she did a bit of modelling and everything else. But as a fighter, should never probably be in the ring. And that's the consequence is, if the board had let her carry on, probably, something bad was probably going to happen anyway. So, you know, the board had to do what the board thought were right.
I think, so you've kind of given your opinion on the racism side of claims. With regards to the female, I think her complaint was, I think she wore tights in a fight, and then the boxing board told her off, and she said she was wearing the tights out of respect for her faith, and the boxing board official basically said to her, you're not supposed to wear them, I'll let you off this time, but don't do it again.
Well, there's a rule, and you have a rule book. When you become a boxer, you're given a rule book of what you can and can't do, the responsibilities of the fighter, and it tells you 2 gum shields, pair of shorts, and there'll be certain rules for women. And if it's not in the book, you don't do it. And before you do it, you run it past, the inspectors on the night. Now, maybe she had these on in the changing room, or maybe they only noticed as she was going into the fight. Maybe the inspector checked her hands and then she put them on and went, who knows? But the rules are the rules, and it's not what her thoughts are on, respecting a religion or whatever it is. We're in the sport of boxing. So you have to abide by the rules of that. So regardless of that, look, racism in boxing, maybe you can make every excuse. If you don't like a decision, well, it's because I'm too tall, too short, I'm black and white, I'm a different colour. It's like, no, the reason is because you're just doing something wrong. And I'll tell you one thing, I've probably been one of the most disciplined and fined coaches in the country by the boxing board. I've had so many fines and so many disciplines against me for being outspoken and doing, things that they don't think I should have been doing, or bringing the game. I've been thrown out the corner several times. I've been fined several times. I've been reprimanded several times. I've been in front of the board several times.
Just out of curiosity, what's the biggest fine you've had?
Biggest fine I've had? The biggest fine I had was Andrew Facey boxing Matthew Macklin, and I got slung out of the corner. I can't remember who the referee was now, it'll come to me. Funnily enough, my dad was doing all the shouting, and they threw me out of the corner, ordered me away from the corner, and I got £1,000 fine.
And do you have to pay these fines in one go, or can you pay people
No, I paid it. Actually, my dad paid it. My dad just paid it. That was one example. Another example, I was in Nottingham, another referee, and I was shouting from the ringside. It wasn't even my... Oh yeah, I was in the corner, I was shouting, and I had to go to the board for that. I got another £1,000 fine, and I had to go redo my trainer seconds course.
What do they do with all this money that if they...
They put it in whatever they do, they put it in the board fund for whatever, for boxers, or I don't care what they do with it. So I've had loads of fines against me, and I could have probably come out with a lot of reasons, with the prejudice and this, but you know what? At the end of the day, yeah, I wasn't abiding by the rules. I didn't agree with what the officials were doing, but the board protect their officials. They do. It's very, very hard to get a decision against a board official. Very difficult. So, Jeff Hines and the other fella, Ian John Lewis, they've been consistently bad for a long time, and that's not just my opinion. That's an opinion of a lot of people, and you'll even see the fans saying it. So, to pull out the race card is wrong, really. It's no, you're not particularly very good. And that's, I've not got any axe to grind, really, with them, because you have to put up with them decisions, what they make. And when you make a complaint to the board, they very rarely get upheld. So they must have had so many complaints, and there must have been so many, things they've done wrong for the board to finally take action.
And just moving on, we've seen in recent interviews, we found out that Anthony Joshua is ticking over, and that is what it's been labelled as, ticking over at Ben Davison's gym, whilst Derek James has obviously been busy recently with Jamel Charlo, Errol Spence, etc. He's training at Ben Davison's gym till he gets back in camp in Texas. Do you make much of that? And what's your views and opinions on that?
Well,
if that link up, let's just say potentially, it's not on the table, but if that link up ever happened, considering Ben trained Fury before.
Looking at that from the outside, in my position, and when I looked at Anthony Joshua going to Derek James in the first place, at that time, all his fighters were riding the crest of a wave. Errol Spence was doing really, really well. Charlos were doing really, really well. All of a sudden, you've got Errol Spence getting beat, and you've got Charlo getting beat. So he's kind of lost his momentum. He hasn't lost his momentum, but in people's minds, there's something going on with the coaching there. when realistically it's probably to do with the fighters. So Anthony Joshua's aligned himself with a coach who's got a very successful camp, and in the space of 2 months, with Errol Spence and Charlo, 2 of the top fighters have been beat. So it's a bit strange then that all of a sudden Anthony Joshua was training with Ben Davison. Because my personal opinion is your coach is your coach, and you don't train with anybody else regardless. One example though, when I used to train Billy Joe Saunders for 3 fights, and then I remember one time he came to me and said, he was training with Ben, he'd won the middleweight title, and I think the super middleweight title, and Ben was training maybe Tyson or somebody else. And he said, Ben's with Tyson in America or somewhere, can I train with you for 6 weeks, get me fit and ready, and then I'll do off a camp with you and then off with Ben. And because I had a good relationship, I said, yeah, no problem, I'll train for 6 weeks. We agreed what the money was. We do 6 weeks, we get you to this particular way. Obviously, you're working with a nutritionist, Greg Marriott, who's in Sheffield as well. He's going to do your nutrition anyway. We can do that. I was quite happy doing that. And then he was going to take over the rest of the fight. But then, but he said, actually, plans change. Ben's doing something else. We'll do the full camp. And it's when he boxed in LA against an Argentinian fella, knocked him out in 9 rounds. So I was happy with doing that. And it was probably the only time I do it, because I'd had a relationship with Billy before. It was fair enough. But I would never do that for anybody else. I would never co-train somebody, work alongside somebody else, never allow anybody else to be in the corner. You're the trainer, that's it. So just reading into that, don't be surprised if Anthony Joshua's all of a sudden next big announcement is he's training with Ben Davison. Why not?
Do you think it'd be quite a clever move if the Fury fight happens down the line?
Look, it doesn't matter who trains Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury's got more of a boxing brain than most trainers. And he knows himself inside out. And Floyd Mayweather is another one of those fighters. So I don't think there's anything that Ben Davison could tell Anthony Joshua, any insight he could give him to beat Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury is just one of those throwback fighters that he can work it out for himself. That's probably why he's been so successful. You look at the shape of him sometimes and the condition of him in fights, and you think about when he was nearly asleep against Deontay Wilder, how he pulled himself back up. No trainer can put that into you. That's just how you are. So it'll not be like Amir Khan going to train with Terence Crawford's trainer, to get an advantage over Kilbrook. I remember Bomac saying, I know you, Kilbrook. I know what, I've got to beat, all these things. I can tell Amir Khan how to beat you. It didn't work out that way, did it? Just because Terence Crawford beat Kilbrook, it wasn't because of Bomac, it was because of Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford's probably another one of those fighters as well who's got it so much worked out because he made such an easy job of Errol Spence. So there's a few fighters in the world who have that unique ability. So I don't think it's not going to matter to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury might actually think it's a disadvantage to Anthony Joshua training with Ben Davison. He may view it that way. Do you know what I mean? Thinking that Ben Davison knows a way to train Anthony Joshua to beat Tyson. I don't think anybody does.
Just for clarity, I'll just point it out there that I asked him about this the other day, and he categorically said that he's in the gym because he gets on well with the McCormack brothers, and he's just basically just moving around in there until Derek James is free.
But you can move around anyway. You don't need a trainer to. If you're just ticking over, you know what I mean. You don't need, you can train in the gym. If Ben Davison don't have to be in the gym, then if he's just ticking over, what advice does Anthony Joshua need to take off any trainer apart from his own trainer? Because what advice is he going to give? What advice is he going to give him? What are you going to do? It's not. You can't have. To coin a phrase, and it's not putting anybody down. A dog can't have 2 masters, and that's a fact with it. Even with a boxing trainer, you've got your ideas how you fight. Your trainer's got the ideas how you should be doing it, and that's how you should be doing it. But realistically, the only long-term trainer that Anthony Joshua's ever had is Robert McCracken. And everybody else then has been different and different and different. So, you know, who's going to know you best over time? Same I used to say about Ricky Hatton. The best trainer for Ricky Hatton was always Billy Graham. And people said, well, Billy Graham wasn't the best trainer in the world. Sometimes it's not being the best trainer in the world. It's knowing how the fighter operates and how to push the buttons to get the best out of that fighter. And that was the best match. And maybe Ricky will say the same, that the best trainer I ever had was Billy Graham, because he took me through all the learning process for years and years and years and years and made me the fighter I was. And then I started changing it at the top end. So, you know, time will tell, but don't be surprised if Anthony Joshua does end up with, you know, Ben Davison.
Yeah, interesting. Let's see how it all unfolds. I'm going to wrap it up there, but I've got to ask you, I'm just out of curiosity, I'm just looking at the picture of your dad behind you with these MBE, was it? I'm just curious, you would have been there that day when he got that. What was his reaction? What was he saying about it coming home? And you
Which
know,
one?
Picture right behind you, just there.
Oh,
do you remember that? Do you remember that day and what was he saying?
The only thing I remember about that day was I didn't actually go. I think my sisters went down with him. You know, I wasn't particularly bothered about turning up for that. I'm glad he got it, because I think, you know, his story and the recognition he got for his services, for everything he did. You know, I think he was great that he met royalty, and I think he just said to him, I said, I didn't realise that Prince Charles was that tall. That was his thing. So over the moon that he got that award. I think you get two of those, and I think my lad's got one. It's a small version, and I think the other one, I think most of my dad's stuff when he died, my sisters were the executors of the will, and it was probably a wise decision. All his books, everything he had, was put into Sheffield Archives, so it's all there for safekeeping. So if anybody ever wants to see, you know, the Brendan Ingle portfolio of his life, or what was left when he died, his books, his scrapbooks, his photo albums, his awards, they're all in the Sheffield Archives for forever and a day, and that's probably the best place, you know, for the public to see if they want to.
I just find it fascinating because I've seen where he's brought up, the very road he was born on, of being there. So it's interesting to go from that to, like you said, meeting Prince Charles and saying, I didn't know he was that tall.
Yeah, it was a big achievement for him. I mean, obviously it was all about people, like I say, I always call it the iceberg effect, that what you actually see of the success, you look on this wall of all the photos, all the champions we've had, you know, the stories of the individuals, is only the tip of the iceberg of what he actually did. Most of the stuff on the underwater part of the iceberg, the kids he helped, the successes, apart from the boxing, actually, if you added them all up, were probably far greater, made more of an impact on more people's lives than actually the champions that he trained. That was this wall of fame, as we like to call it, is just the tip of the iceberg, and that was a lifetime of work he did. You know what a lot of people didn't see in the media. You know, they heard about it, they talked about it, but you know, there's thousands and thousands of kids out there, and they bump into me now, grown adults. In fact, I was walking to Rotherham the other day with an ex-boxer of mine. It's a 7-kilometre walk to where the gym I am. I'll just go for a walk, and a guy stopped me, an Asian guy with his 2 daughters. Dominic Ingle, I've seen you on Boxing King Media. Come over to shake my hand. I used to come down to the gym when Errol Graham was there. What a great time. Johnny Nelson, he was talking. I was stood there 10 minutes. And like his daughter's looking and thinking, who's this guy? Who's this white guy my dad's talking to? Best years of my life. Best years of my life. So, you know, that's the impact. No matter where you go, there's always some era. Oh, yeah, I was in the gym when Naz was training. I was in the gym when Kell Brook was training. I was there when Errol Graham was training. So I said to this guy, I says, you know, he must have been 50. He goes, oh yeah, only a kid, Errol Graham, fantastic, you know, I loved him. Went to all his fights. And that's the impact it has. You know, boxing has that, you know, even now, wherever you go, they're always talking about the fighters who came from the Ingle Gym in Sheffield and you know, the famous fighters who came through.
Fascinating, Dom. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll catch up very soon.